Welcome everybody to our webinar today. I think you probably know this is going to be a pretty emotional day and event. Just want to share as people get logged in. Our speaker is joining us in just a moment. Please note some of the details on the slides in case those answer some of your questions, but we're going to get through our introductions so we can get to this material. I'm Christina Clayton. I'm one of the co-directors of the Northwest Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. Welcome to today's webinar. So you want to be an ally with Sherronda Jamerson. We want to start first with our land acknowledgement, and we do this even in a virtual setting because we feel it's very important to reflect on the lands on which we reside and acknowledge all the ancestral homelands and traditional territories of Indigenous peoples who have been here since time immemorial and whose lands were forcibly taken over and inhabited. Why do we do this? We want to commit to continue to be better stewards of these lands through action, advocacy, support, and education. We'll put in a chat to some fantastic resources from Native Land if you want to learn about your lands. And thank you for just taking a moment to think about that. A little bit about the MHTTC network. We are a nationwide network that is supported by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, otherwise known as SAMHSA. We have 10 regional centers, a National American Indian Alaska Native Center, a National Hispanic and Latino Center, and a network coordinating office. And those structures are in place for the addiction and prevention field using the same structure. If you haven't been with one of our events before, we do resource development, dissemination, training and TA, workforce development, all for free. We are located in Region 10, and we're very grateful to be here covering Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. Those are generally for our more intensive projects, but webinars like this, anyone can attend, and we're grateful that you're here today. We're sited at the University of Washington in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, and our goals are to accelerate the adoption of best practices, heighten knowledge and skills, excuse me, foster alliances and address training needs among our diverse workforce, and keep bringing the free training coming. And for the network, our area of focus is evidence-based practices for psychosis, such as ACT or CBTP, but we provide training on a lot of topics. And so you'll find that in our event calendars, certainly not the only thing that we train on. So we do webinars, learning communities, online courses, newsletters, resource libraries, and a podcast, and all of it is free, and we really value your input. So we'll talk about how you rate today's event in a moment. We always just want to be mindful at the whole network. We wanted to share this slide with every event to just make sure we're all aware and taking a moment to reflect on being respectful, using recovery orientation, and really being mindful of all the different perspectives that come up in these events. So whether it's the chat, which I know can be overwhelming, we'll probably show you how to disable the previews because I know that can be difficult, but feel free to be as active or not active in the chat as you like. I think Sherronda will not really be able to look at the chat while she's presenting, but we appreciate just being accepting of all perspectives. That's what we're trying to aim for. Some logistics: you're muted and off camera. It's a webinar. It is being recorded. You can use closed captioning. You can also close those out. I learned yesterday you can move where the captioning is on your screen. So we'll share the video recording and slides and send instructions on how to get a certificate of attendance. It's not formal CEs, by a governing body, but it's something you might be able to use for your purposes. Please use chat for those things we just discussed. If it's very active, we may lose. So feel free to prompt us if you're having a tech issue or you have a question about something like slides or the recordings, or you just want to say hi and share, like we're doing this poll and maybe other is the category you had to choose. We're limited in this, but we'll be monitoring the Q&A box for content questions for Sherronda, which we'll take at the end with whatever time we have left. Please make sure that you use the Q&A box for questions you want Sherronda to consider while we have time. And we'll get to those later. Lastly, your feedback is very crucial to your work. And I wanted to share that, we'll send a brief link to a short survey that takes just a couple of minutes after the session. They do ask a weird combo of letters and numbers about yourself. You can use whatever numbers and letters you care to, because this is a one-time event. That's your personal code. but it is really valuable to get your input. We want to know if these topics and presentations are valuable to you, how you receive them, and what you'd recommend for the future. We are required to do these, but we really actually look at these, and they're confidential. We just aggregate and we share it with our presenters and our training team. Also, SAMHSA funds us. They don't have specific perspective on our exact content here. So it's just a little disclaimer about that. So I think, Gabrielle, are we sharing the results of the poll at this point?
Indeed, we are.
Awesome. Thank you. So quite a range. And as I expected, the other is quite large. And so thank you for putting your specific answers in the chat. I don't know how to better do this other than, I don't know, write it in what your thing is in the chat. But thank you for being here today. You can close out that if you like. Today, I'm very, very grateful to have Sherronda Jamerson here again. If you haven't seen her, she was with us for a couple of webinars last fall. We're going to, I think, continue to do work together. You and I just got approved to do a conference presentation in June. I am so humbled to work with you. And as people might know from a past event, sort of really worked hard to try and find you after seeing you speak on these issues. You're a passionate speaker. You are energized, yet I know this is taxing. Sherronda got her master's degree in clinical psychology from City University in 2012, also a certified chemical dependency professional from 2007. And she develops, implements, and presents EDI trainings to healthcare professionals, providers, schools, community-based organizations. I mentioned in our podcast that I think you win an award every other week. You text me sweet pictures, which I'm so grateful to be on a texting basis with you, but much deserved, and that you are just continuing to make change and affect people in a variety of ways and levels. So with that, I know it's been a tough couple weeks personally for you. Nationally, we're, just dealing with another death of Tyree Nichols, and why does this keep happening? So today is very poignant. It's the start of Black History Month, which of course isn't just 1 month in the year. A lot of emotions. When we planned this a few months ago, it was with a different tone. I know you and I talked, but I'm really grateful that you're here today. So please share what you want, however you want. Okay. This is your time. We just value having you with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina, and Gabrielle. You guys have been great. I'm going to give everybody permission to feel what they feel. It's been a long 2 weeks for me, and it was up all night. I'm really bothered by what's going on. Not just in our nation, but locally. A couple of weeks ago, I lost a colleague who was an ally. She was a strong ally. And I know, around this time, I think about her because I know she would have been in my office, or she would have emailed me, text me, and said, "What can I do for you?" I want you to see these emotions because I see these emotions. I want you to feel my emotions because I feel them. In the community, not just the Black community with Tyree Nichols, but with even the Asian community. They've had a massacre in their community. We need not to turn a blind eye to what's going on. We need to dive in, and we need to get in there and support one another. That's the only way things are going to change. And in my perspective, we went from George Floyd. 3 years later, we're here with Tyree Nichols. And as I said earlier, I think it's because we're asking the wrong questions. And what I tell my clients is if we ask the wrong questions, we focus on the wrong things, we will never get the results that we're looking for. That's why we're coming together. And I am very challenged with technology. So give me a second as I'm trying to figure out how to bring my slides up.
Sherronda, you just do your thing. I'll just fill some space while you can focus on that. This has been a really powerful time, and just for folks to know, we do a podcast, and Sherronda and I just did record something, and we have all our previous webinars and talks with Sherronda on our website. So we'll get to that later, but it's, I think, as I said before, like, we got to be where we are right now. And I really appreciate you still being here today.
Can you guys see my slides, by the way?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's okay.
Escape. Hold on, you guys. I'm gonna get there. Here. Okay.
And also we'll have, there's resources that Sherronda shared that are on our event page, but we will probably have quite a bit more that we'll share on our product page. So where the webinar recording lives and, slides, which you'll get. We will post things like the video that we're going to share at some point during today's talk. There we go. I can see something.
Hey. Okay.
And
Now can you see it? Okay.
Yep. You're good.
Whew. Okay, guys. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm hurt, I'm tired, and I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed because of the questions that I'm hearing asked, which is, I'm going back to Tyree. I'm sorry, Tyree Singles. What did he do? I mean, really, is that relevant? Is that what we need to be focusing on? And then other questions. Well, what do you think it is? Why do you think 5 Black men would beat on another Black man? I'm going to go through this allyship training, and then I will give you my thoughts around that situation. The one thing that I really want to do is challenge the way we all think, the way we all show up, and the impact that we have on each other, or at least the ones that we perceive we have on each other, and how we perceive ourselves as showing up. We're so conditioned to believe a narrative that we fail to do the research to verify if what has been presented to us has any merit or not. We've gotten really lazy around doing research for ourselves. What the saying is, trust but verify. The other thing that annoys me about Americans is we have very short memories. We get fired up, want to do something, and then when things sizzle down, we want to go back to our old ways of doing things. How? Why? And then we wonder how we make it back here, why we're in the same spot, why things continue to happen the way they happen. That's because we keep going back to what we feel is comfortable for us. We really have to get to the place where we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable if we expect for change to happen. And as I was saying in the podcast, our society is built and is designed to keep us separate and apart. It's designed to have us to look at each other in ways in which we won't come together. Why do you think CRT, critical race theory, has been outcast or outlawed? They don't want us to get to know each other. They don't want us to come together. Why? Because when we do, things happen. We're conditioned to believe that our so-called officials, our leaders, are they're working for us. No, I mean that we're working for them. They're working for us. We're so conditioned that we're not even paying attention to that. They come for our votes when it's time for them to be reelected. They need our voice. What are we telling them? Are we holding them accountable? Do we write them? Do we call them? Do we tell them what we need? Do we tell them what we want? That is part of being an ally, is taking action. Allyship is not, and I will get to some of these slides. I'm going to talk about the one Martin Luther King said it better, and I'm going to get to that slide. But it's not enough to just say, this is what we want. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to risk? That's my question as we go through this presentation. I needed to be amongst my community this weekend. It really is not just what happened to Tyrese Nichols. That's really bothering me. Not just the death of my colleague that's bothering me, but there was another situation that happened 2 Fridays ago at my job where there was one of my Black colleagues was waiting at the bus. There was white people standing. She was the only Black person there. And I hope she joined us because I gave her the link. A white guy busts out the ER, said he's gonna kill a nigger. He just wanted to kill a nigger. That's what he wanted to do. She was the only one there. She turns to the white woman who was sitting next to her. said, did you hear what he said? They kept going on about their business that they didn't hear nothing. He came and tried to take a swipe at her. She defended herself. Somehow security got involved. Asked her, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? She gets on the bus. No one says anything to her. Not, how can I help you? Are you okay? Nothing. And just because she wasn't physically injured, and because you cannot see the physical scars, she's doing okay. She's not doing okay. We are not doing okay. Stop assuming because you can't see our scars that we don't have them. We do. So I'm very frustrated about a number of things. I went to church. I'm glad I did because I needed it, period. And for those who do believe this may be helpful for you, Pastor came with, he offered up the scripture for Samuel verses 7, which talked about how we judge each other by what we see, and we don't judge each other by our potential or our hearts. And the only way we're going to get to know each other's hearts is to get to know each other. Not if I'm a woman, not if I'm, whatever my sexual preferences is, not what my religion is. None of that should matter. What matter is, how am I showing up? Am I being an ally to you? Am I supporting you? Or am I harming you? What difference does any of the other stuff make? There's so many people who are doing whatever they're doing. It doesn't affect my life one way or the other. So why am I going to make their business my business? That's the other part of America. We're so nosy. We want to control everything. Mind your business. In this moment, and I am role modeling the behavior I would like to see you guys do, which is demonstrate respect for your experience. Whatever your experience is, demonstrate respect for it. Your experience is yours to own. Don't allow anyone to give you your experience. People love to tell you how you should show up, how you should look at things, how you should see things, how you should feel things, and then you disregard yourself in order to be amongst the popular belief. I'm asking you, turn in yourself, trust yourself, honor yourself, respect yourself, and do what you know is right. Because your conscience, you have to live with that. No one else. And 9 times out of 10, first, let me back up. Let me slow down and let me back up. The ideology that we initially have is given to us. Whether it's given to us by our society, our family, our religion, our norms, is given to us. It's our responsibility to check ourselves. It's our responsibility to do something different when the occasion arises. The occasion has risen. It's here. Translate your meaning. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't say what you think what others want to hear. There's liberty and judgment in everything you do. And if you're already going to be judged, then be judged by the content of your character. Be judged by your conscience and not by the conscience that has been handed down to you. I'm sorry, the ideology that has been handed down to you, because some people act in a way in which they think is more acceptable, and they go against what they know. They go against their own conscience. All of us have different gifts. All of us have different talents. And if we go along with the crowd, then we lose sight of what we have to offer. I haven't lost that sight. I'm going to be me. Like it or not, that's not my problem. Listen to yourself. If you choose to blend in with the crowd, then you give up the opportunity to stand out from the crowd. Give your accurate location. Own your experience in real time. What are you feeling right now? What are you thinking right now? What do you want to be doing right now? Allow yourself to be that, to have that, to own that. Demonstrate that you are coachable. All of us have been conditioned to believe, much of what we believe. We need to be more open to self-discover without being concerned. We can't concern ourselves about popular opinion or who feelings we're going to hurt. We cannot be responsible for other people's feelings. We have to be responsible for our own feelings. and how we show up and the impact that we have. And is this how we want to live our lives? What do you want your legacy to be? Take the risk. Some people don't like the word ally. Some people want to say, I need accomplice. If you want to be accomplice, cool. But you have to, in order to take the risk, in order for you to be an ally or to be an accomplice, there have to be shared risks, shared costs. You can't just think, that you're an ally just because, oh, I identify with that. Yes, that's wrong. Yes, that shouldn't do it. And then that's it. Being an ally or being an accomplice requires action. You have to take some action, not just say, I agree with you, or that's wrong what they're doing to you, or that's wrong how they treat. What are you doing? If you know it's wrong, what are you doing to help bend justice, to do things differently? And we like to put labels on stuff so much, that drives me nuts. Because once you label somebody or label a situation, you lock them in that label. Black woman, what did they teach you about Black women? Gay people, what did they teach you about that? Rich people, what did they teach you about that? Muslims, what did they teach you? All that conditioning, once you label somebody, then you start treating those people according to the conditioning that comes with those labels. We have to take the labels off and just say, how can I show for you human to human? We have to start showing up human to human. We all bleed red. None of us can survive without the blood. And I give blood every 3 months. Do you think they're asking, is that a Black woman's blood? No, they want to live. And we want to live too. We want the freedom to live our lives without the oppression, without the killing, without the beating. We want that stuff. How can you show up? How can you show up? Words are not enough to be a real ally. Decrease harm to marginalized communities. Okay, we say honesty is the best policy. Okay, if honesty is the best policy, then why are laws created to hide the truth? Why lie? Why gaslight the people? We're going to be violent against you. You guys have the right to protest, but you don't be violent. What? Why don't you demonstrate the behavior you would like to see others perpetuate? And if you don't want us to get violent, then you stop getting violent against us. And against other, I'm not just talking about Black people. I'm just talking about people who are not white. The people who are not white are targeted. Jewish people are targeted. Asian people are targeted. Black people are targeted. Immigrants are targeted. LGBTQ are targeted. Muslims are targeted. Why? Because we don't fit your narratives? We're not supposed to fit your narrative. That will be an oxymoron to diversity and inclusion. If everything was the same, everyone was the same, everyone acted the same and thought the same, that's dumb. We wouldn't get anywhere. And if all men are created equal, then why the labels? And like Pinocchio, my question is, who's pulling your strings? We all know that judging is easier than understanding. Lack of understanding create barriers. Barriers are dividers. And here we are. I did a training up in rural Spokane. The organizer who brought me up there, she was so concerned because I speak just like this everywhere I go. I just refuse to blend in. I refuse to compromise who I am to make someone feel good. That's not my job. That would never be my job. And got through the training, and I asked the group, and I was the only Black person there, and I think there might have been 2 or 3 Latinos that was there. And I asked the question, I said, if I did not want my son to date a white woman, would I be considered a racist? The room got quiet. No one wanted to speak. No one wanted to answer that question. But I waited. Silence is good. Discomfort is really good. Finally, one white woman raised her hand. She said, yeah, that would be, I'll consider you a racist. I said, why? She said, because then you'd be doing to us what you said you don't want us to do to you. I said, okay. You tell me one white man who's been arrested for raping Black women. I'll wait. Emmett Till was accused, and now many, many moons later found out it wasn't even true. That 14-year-old boy was tortured because a white woman said that he whistled at her. He whistled at her. I said, so why would I want my Black son to go through any of that? I'm trying to save my son, and you want to call me a racist. And the reason why you can put that label on me is because you lack the Black experience. You don't know what it's like to be a Black parent. You have no idea what it's like to have to worry about your kids if they get pulled over, going to the store, going to school. You have no idea. And I'm not saying you need to agree with me, but you need to understand why I feel the way I feel when it comes to my Black children in white America. Now I'm going to set up this video on race baiting 101 because we're all getting sucked in and baited. Christina, can you set that up, please?
Yeah, I think Gabrielle is going to share. So she'll probably just take over to share screen, and hopefully that can happen as soon as she's able. Great.
My name is Matthew Cook, and this is a demonstration on how to race bait. First, let's talk about some of the stereotypes expressed in the 17th and 18th centuries. The vile and brutish parts of mankind. The marks of an alien race. Those were how the gentleman class described whites. Poor whites, to be exact, from Europe, many of whom were duped by a con game, promised an all-expense-paid trip to the New World, in return for years of free labor on the other side. Then there were those sentenced to work for 5 to 7 years of forced labor. In the 1700s alone, over 50,000 documented white men and women were shipped to the colonies and auctioned off as labor for crimes from petty theft to trespassing or pickpocketing. A slave was considered unfortunate, not inferior. To become a slave in the ancient world was not based on skin color, but the result of being on the losing side in a war. White indentured servants 400 years ago were seen as more or less the same as African slaves. They also made easy alliances, raging against greed, unfair taxes, oppressive land use regulations, and in the 1670s, one of those alliances nearly burned Jamestown to the ground. And the last to surrender were 100 men, 80 black and 20 white. And a law enforcement system was created to give whites slightly more privileges and force a separation in their contact with blacks. This three-tiered caste system, blacks on the bottom and poor whites a notch above, now treated more favorably, made them feel as though one day they might improve their status if they just worked hard enough. And maybe some did, but most did not, especially as the life expectancy was only 35. As all rights and freedoms were taken from Africans, this new racial caste system protected the wealthy landowners, who in the South would soon become known as the masters. And if you're interested in reading more about this, there's a page-turning thriller, not exaggerating, called The People's History of the United States, which you can download as an audiobook to support this series. The creation of that three-tiered caste system is the moment the modern institution of racial slavery is born, which would brutalize, divide, and crush the spirits of black men, women, and children for the next 200 years, and give many poor whites the idea that though their lives might be miserable, at least they weren't black. Until 1863. And as Michelle Alexander writes in The New Jim Crow, former slaves had a brief moment in the sun before they returned to a state akin to slavery or worse. The unprecedented economic might of the new United States, built on the backs of an enormous free slave labor force, would arguably be the single greatest factor contributing to what would soon become the world's largest modern superpower. And in gratitude, instead of helping freed slaves find homes, reunite with families, or help anyone, at the very least, heal from a 300-year-old trauma, they were largely neglected by the North, faced rampant disease, outbreaks of smallpox, cholera, many starved to death, and for the next 100 years, this thing called Jim Crow just took over for slavery. Enforced by government, courts, and law officers, forcing a continuation of an already well-established racial caste system on every aspect of American life. Ministers said whites were the chosen people, blacks cursed to be servants. God supported racial segregation. Craniologists, eugenicists, phrenologists, and social Darwinists at every educational level reinforced the belief that blacks were in every way inferior to whites. Massive social disadvantages, compounded by predatory lending and housing markets, and legally regulating blacks into ghettos, discriminatory bank lending practices, severe job discrimination, not to mention the lynchings, all continued until the 1960s. Now we're only talking 50 years ago. We finally have the Civil Rights Act, black nationalism, and black power, black pride. For the first time, a public promise of opportunity after 3 centuries of the opposite, communities getting to police their own streets. But the black pride forces are soon struck down by the law and order movement. And what takes the place of what was once called Jim Crow? The invention of the largest prison industry in the world, in the form of new laws, tougher laws, more laws, longer sentences, mandatory minimums, more prisons, more police, and the barbaric war on drugs, which should be called the war on people, where blacks are far more likely to be arrested for selling or possessing drugs than whites, even though whites use drugs at the same rate, and are actually more likely to sell drugs. Blacks who've committed the exact same crimes as whites are more likely to be arrested, prosecuted, more likely to have longer prison sentences. Families deprived of breadwinners and once again deprived of the right to vote. Generations sentenced to a revolving door in and out of a prison system so unstoppable that 1 out of 3 black men born today can expect to go to prison in their lifetime. And so despite the existence of so many notable, heroic black, brown, and white cops saving lives and rescuing victims from unimaginable horrors across the country, righteous lawyers, wise judges, honest legislators doing great things that cannot and should never be overlooked, overall, Black America has never seen a substantive break in law enforcement service to larger forces ever on the wrong side of history. Policing for petty regulatory violations like failure to use a turn signal or lacking a front license plate. And so here we are today. 30% of America are minorities, but represent 60% of the prison population. Over 1 million men and women. And so the majority of Black America, 70%, understandably have little trust in law enforcement or the criminal justice system. But don't be fooled. This prison industrial complex has not only swept up Black America, but all people of limited means, hunting minorities and the poor at rates higher than any other on the planet. This thing grew bigger than anyone could have imagined. It's militarized and increased in scope and aggression. And as racist as it clearly is, even if we took all the minorities out of the equation, leaving only the white majority, we would still be over-incarcerated. We would still have vile police brutality. We would still have a criminal justice system desperately in need of reform. So just like the days of early slavery, today we still have a 3-tiered system. With notable exceptions, slightly more than half of Black Americans graduate from high school, compared to 3/4 of white Americans. And Black males are twice as likely to be unemployed as white males. Moving on to the second tier, we have poor whites, treated the second worst as a whole. With many more notable exceptions, so many you'd think it wasn't the case, white America is also in very bad shape. The real poverty rate for the US as a whole is staggeringly close to 50%. We have a myth of social mobility that is one of the worst in the industrialized world due to decades of disinvestment from communities sending cheap labor overseas, leaving depressed, isolated local economies with no jobs, a dwindling tax base, and nothing to attract business or new residents. And why is this? As the great journalist Emily Cleeth says, we should never say the word poverty without the words inequality and injustice being far behind. People become poor, not by personal failing, but because the system is engineered to push them down and keep them down. Yet despite numerous horrific incidents of police brutality and criminal injustice against whites, the beating of a homeless man or a horse thief to near death or to death, or the 1 million whites in prison, unprecedented in our nation's history, the majority of whites today, 57%, still have quite a lot, or a great deal of confidence in police, and a majority think the justice system is fair. The poor whites and victims of criminal injustice and inequality are spread out across the country and heavily divided by culture and politics. The so-called liberal or conservative news media is owned by 6 mega media companies that control 90% of our information. Those companies are owned by the very rich. According to Forbes, the 400 wealthiest Americans today have more money than the poorer half of the entire population of the United States. While less than 4% of our entire country are millionaires, they make up over half the members of Congress. Well, who do you think millionaires represent? The elite who run the country in a different revolving door of economic royalty have demonstrated certainly that they are above prosecution. So with a news media that mostly reports only on the black outrage at police brutality, which is and has been at a boiling point for the last 300 years, the white majority is confused. They make all kinds of assumptions, and the white minority, who are aware of the horrors of the criminal and justice system, but unaware of the history of Black America, feel themselves being lumped in with the elites. When they scream at Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson and call them race baiters, they're right to scream, but they're screaming at the wrong faces. The media is terrified to let the mass of Americans know the truth about our three-tiered caste system alive and well and keeping us divided. Why do I need to identify with those ancestors before me that committed genocide and not only enslaved, but brutalized a people who in chains and in struggle for civil rights created and inspired some of the greatest art, music, culture, writing, ideas, invention, and humanity the world has ever seen? I identify with being part of that struggle. I don't need to be proud of my blood because the same color red gives life to us all. I don't need to be proud of the color of my skin because I was never told I needed to be ashamed of it. True shame is only for those who have hate in their hearts, and that can be healed. I don't need to be proud of my religion because all the great religions warn us against pride. I am privileged to be a white, straight male in a society that favors those traits for which I had nothing to do with. Favors I might not even know I had. I grew up poor. There were a few years I was homeless, but I did not grow up black. And I was blessed in my childhood to see the difference. To paraphrase Van Jones, even in a hoodie, I look less like Trayvon than I do like Mark Zuckerberg. So along the way, in forming my identity as a human being, I choose to identify with all of humanity in a struggle for harmony. You are my ally and I am yours. I don't need to be better than someone else to feel good about myself. I need to feel the same. I acknowledge racism as existing and alive as it ever was, and in doing so, I eliminate any invented wall between us. When we ally ourselves with a movement that's been asking to just acknowledge for 4 odd centuries how overdue it is to just say 3 words, Black Lives Matter. Then united, we are a power that will shake the masters to their core. Yes, I say masters of the global economy that exploits not only our own nation but the entire planet. The masters of the commercial news, the military-industrial complex, prison complex, the overwhelming majority of the government. The masters corrupted by the influence too much power has on all human beings. For injustice and inequality are one and the same. Black, brown, white, sisters, brothers. The class struggle unites us all, as it always has. And race baiters, you are exposed.
Okay. Let's pick it back up. While we're here, I want to also offer a couple more there's some documentaries I would like to, if you got your pen and paper ready. The House I Live In, Fight the Power, How Hip Hop Changed the World. And then there's a movie, if you haven't seen it, Between Enemies. It shows the struggle. So becoming an ally is not always going to be easy. Sometimes it's going to be a struggle. And I welcome confrontation. Confrontation is not a bad thing. People, it get a bad name and a bad rap because people let stuff build, and then they snap and then they become confrontational. But confrontational is just really holding people accountable. That's really all confrontational is. And I could tell you a personal story on confrontation that I had. I went to a training, I'll make it real short, went to a training and there's one white guy raised his hand and he said, what can I do about slavery? It was so long ago. People, let me tell you something. Slavery has been since biblical days, no doubt. And it still exists tonight, still exists right now. The only difference is it looks different. So it's getting harder to recognize. But slavery today is sex trafficking, imprisonment. Lynching is not just hanging of a person. It's to send a message. That's what lynching is. Killing Mr. Nicholson, that's sending a message. That's modern day lynching. Jim Crow today, it's redlining. People still can't live where they want to live. Still, And they still have the sundown, the sundown law or something, where in certain places you better not get caught with in certain areas when the sun goes down. You won't come up for the next daybreak. In the video, I don't know if you caught this, but they said that slavery didn't start off by color. It started off by whoever lost the war. They became the slave. Do you know who made it about color? I hope you're sitting down. In the 1400s, slavery by color was created by the Catholic Church. That's who started it by color. And now they're trying to reconcile that past as we speak. So, United States, built on genocide, as it was demonstrated in the 11-minute film, just killing people, destroying people who don't fit their narrative, who don't fit their profile, who they think is less than. Standardized testing is another form of genocide. Not smart enough, you don't deserve. Eugenics, same thing. Half truth. You get these initiatives when it's time to vote. They'll tell you what they need you to vote on, but they attach something else in there that you don't know until things have passed, and now we have to pay the consequences of the way we voted. Greed, intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, and food. Untruth, lies or false statements, war of mass destruction, or I'm sorry, weapon of mass destruction. We need to go fight. Wasn't true. Gaslighting, again, saying something that is not true when we can clearly see, oh, everybody has equal rights and things have gotten better. Tell me how. How do you quantify it? What are you using to say that things have gotten better? So that's where I left off. It's important to understand that white supremacy, the social, economics, and political system that collectively enables white people to maintain and power over people of other races. Now, when I know a lot of white people don't like white supremacy, I'm not a white supremacist, because they think about, the KKK with the white. That's the more extreme side. We're talking about economic and social status. That's what we're talking about. It's designed for white people. White privilege, advantage, like he said in the video, he had nothing to do with how he came into this world, but because of how he came into this world, he was granted privileges. Systematic racism, a group. So this is a group process to make sure that the resources and the money and the wealth and continue to go to white people. And then racialized trauma, the cumulative effects of racism, overt or covert acts on individual mental and physical health that leads to trauma symptoms, including anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, as well as physical health. And one thing you need to understand is these things can show up as physical in your body. So when you go to the doctors and the doctor said that they can't find anything, it doesn't mean that they didn't look. It just means that it's something other than. So we need to go back and check your trauma. Let's go back and deal with the trauma. And then maybe whatever the way it's manifesting itself physically can get itself worked out. This historian, he had a hobby, and he just thought he'd go through some books, and he had thought and when he went through the books, he's seen that white supremacy is all through these books. So we have been conditioned in a very subtle way. So pennies add up to $1, but when it's 5 cents, 10 cents, we really don't notice it until it gets blown out of proportion. It's like, wait a minute, something don't seem right. So white supremacy preceded the origins of the United States. Every aspect of social interaction, particularly in the 18th, 19th centuries, was dominated by white identity, and white supremacy became an expression of American identity. These sentiments can also be found in America's Christianity. As I said, it was the Catholic Church who decided to say, we're going to use the slaves, we're going to identify slaves according to their color. Now, with this being said, the other piece of it that I don't think is in here that I want you to understand is the Daughters of the Confederates. They're the ones who have a lot of influence over what textbooks comes into our schools. And their textbooks is very subtle too, because it also justifies why Jim Crow should be what it is. And this is not a funny story, but here's a story. In Washington State and the cemetery, the Daughters of Confederate monument was defaced. The news media got involved. They did a research and trying to figure out who is over this to see if they're going to fix it. Come to find out, the president of the Daughters of the Confederate was someone that I knew and interacted with. And I confronted her on it. And I didn't want to, I know people can change. I don't know how long it was. And I continue to treat her as I feel she's showing up to me. But I just want her to know that I see you. So all men are created equals. Understand something. In 1619 is when slavery happened. The United States was founded in 1776. So that means the ideal of people of color who don't fit the narrative of being white, majority white male, in between the ages of 1864, US born, heterosexual, Christian, middle class, those opinions was already set for the others, and it wasn't in our favor. And it continued on. And the reason why it lasts so long is because white people started identifying themselves as the identity got wrapped up in this whole scenario. So I pretty much can figure out which white person have failed to gain their own independence and their own identity, and they still wrapped up in the identity that was given to them. Because if you have a hard time having a conversation about this, then I know that it's not because, I know that it's because you haven't done the core work. And I know that your identity is wrapped up in the identity that was given to you because you have failed to do your due diligence and becoming your independent person. Emancipation Proclamation happened in 1863. Juneteenth happened in 1865. So we was free, so they say, in 1863. But the word came down in 1865. But here we are in 2023. I still don't feel free. I'm just going to be honest. So another good documentary is the Reconstruction American After the Civil War. So these are the numbers. These numbers are a little faulty, but it's pretty close to what it is. But if you look at the numbers, these same numbers of the richest people, Congress, governors, military advisors, president, Freedom Caucus, and current press cabinet, this looked very different after the Reconstruction, after the Civil War. There was definitely more people of color in these ranks, but they made sure that they scared them off, hung, lynched, whatever, to get them out of there so they can raise it back up to continue to run America the way they have been running America. And here's the deal. So there's a white fear. White fear is real, right? So a lot of white people are concerned that if Black people come in power, and this is what I'm hearing white people tell me now, that they're concerned that they're going to be treated the way they treat other people. And, as a therapist, I'm like, if you're not treating people the way you know they need to be treated or deserve to be treated, and you're scared that you're going to treat it that way, why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? TV shows, as you see in the video, white people run that. Decide who's covering the news. The news is so biased, it's ridiculous. There's no such thing as good reporting anymore. Reporting, to me, is just reporting the facts. Absolutely not. You're not getting that. Everybody's getting race baited. Everybody. Okay, here we go. The letter from Birmingham jail in April 16, 1963. I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderates. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that Negroes' great stumbling block is stumbling blocks in the stride towards freedom is not the white citizens concealer of the KKK, but the white moderates who is more devoted to law and order. You can read the rest of that, but I want to pause here. Where was the law and order for Rodney King, Trayvon Martin, Mr. Nicholson? Where was the law and order when the colonizers killed off the Native Americans, when they killed off people from Mexico and took their land? Where was the law and order then? Where was the law and order on January 6th? Where was the law and order? Why is it always when it comes down to non-white people, we got to do law and order? But when it comes down to white people doing what they want to do, not all white people, just those, in my opinion, who exercise white fear, and those who are scared to give up their privilege and don't want to share it. I'm talking about those who are in power and those who have access to, who have far reach. Those are the ones I'm talking about. There've always been great white people. There's always been, I just want to make that very clear, white people. There's always been white people who have died for the cause of Black and brown people and immigrants. Always have been, and I believe it always will be. If you look at any, I'm not a history buff, but I own a lot of history documentaries, and I travel a lot to seek out history, and I learn stories that are not printed in Black and white. I talk to the descendants of these people who has gone through. That's why my heart aches, because I know the stories, not the one that was passed down to us, but the ones that I am paying money now to seek out and share with you. I want to give you that understanding. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matters. That is so, so, so true. He who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetrate it. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. That is in line with the article that you should have access to, and don't let the title turn you away. It says all white people let you down. It's just talking about the complacency of white people not doing anything, not saying anything, not showing up. This is how I feel, but I know better. This is how I feel, but I know better. And to go along with this, in 1655, in the 13 colonies, the court ruled that a person could serve as a slave forever, even if they've never committed a crime. Normally, if you're trying to pay off a debt or you committed a crime, you go into slavery, not prison. Prison came after slavery was over, and then Jim Crow came in, and that's when the prison system came in. And Maryland County Council in 1638 stated that neither existing Black population, their descendants, nor any other Black shall be permitted to enjoy the fruits of white society, although we build it on our backs. So with all that has been said, and all the subliminal message that goes down, we all have blinders. All of us have blind spots. So even as you're driving in the car, you have the rearview mirror, you have the side mirror, you have all these mirrors, but there's still blind spots to where you can crash into people if people are in, the right spot moving at the same time. These things develop our attitude. Going to the movies, going to get your food. You have the premier, whoever is a member, and then you have those who are not. Being on a plane, first class people, middle class, poor class. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so we tend to start looking at people sideways because of the messages that we have been sent to us implicitly, the subliminal message that has been sent to us. We act out of that. That's why we got to be careful how we label people. And then we got to better understand, why are we labeling people? And is it good to label people? I remember one of the right-wing talk show hosts, the Black women Rutgers basketball team had won their game, and they was called out as nappy-headed hoes. Why? Because they were successful? And then I do applaud. So this is what I'm saying. Here's the blind spot. There were some white people when they came, they jumped on and said, yeah, and they jumped on the bandwagon, and then they started reading and understanding these women, their grades were good, their conduct is good, everything about them is good. And one woman had to concede, and she said, I would want my daughter to be like those ladies. So it's the lack of knowledge that caused us to treat people the way we do and label them. We cannot live above our knowledge. It's impossible. We cannot become or try to become an ally to someone when we haven't done our work. You'll cause more harm, and then you get the feedback, and then your response is going to be, well, that wasn't my intentions. Of course it wasn't your intention, but you haven't done the work. First impressions. We judge. It's just what it is. That's what our brains do. In the first 5 seconds, we judge safety, attraction, danger, height, color, nationality, sexuality. We judge that. That's just what we do. And that's why they say, be careful about the first impression that you make, because it lasts a long time. Even if you don't see yourself as racist, and maybe not racist, but it doesn't mean that you don't have racist tendencies, and it doesn't mean that you can't come off as a racist. So that's why it's important to get feedback. I ask everybody feedback about me, because I want to see the parts of me that I cannot see. I'm not scared of the feedback. I do read the comments, the evaluations. I read that. I want to know what you're seeing. What are you hearing? What do I need to do differently? How do I need to show up? If I feel it's applicable. But if that's a personal issue you right now, I can't help you. Go get therapy. I can help you that way. Come see me for that. I don't see color. I don't see race. That's so offensive. That's so offensive. If you don't see race, how can you help? How can you be an ally if you don't see race? If you don't see race, you don't see the struggle. If you don't see race, you don't see the pain. I'm still carrying a lot of pain. But if you're saying you don't see it, and that, when people say that, it's to make themselves comfortable. They haven't done the work. They're scared to say the wrong things. They're scared to hurt feelings. But one thing I would tell you, if you never try, you never know if you can succeed. And you never know how far you can get in life or in communities unless you try. You have to try. And you have to take away your exit doors. Like people of color, we don't have exit doors. We don't have options. People with privilege, you have options, and you have exits, and you have options. Get rid of those doors, seal them shut, sit in it, be in it, write it out with us. Good intentions are not enough. It's just not. Collect the data, monitor inequities. And when you see it, you notice it, do something about it. Reduce behaviors or speaking in such a way to avoid causing offense. The way I see it, offense is going to happen because we're doing something new. Until we figure out, and it's with anything, you start a new job, you get a new relationship, you have a blended family, mistakes are going to happen, but do you stop and do you give up? No, because that is something of value. That's something that you want. So you're not going to give up on something that you want and you think is of value. So if you stop this allyship process, it was never a value to you in the first place. You're just kidding yourself. Objective process, development and improvement of some type of process. You got to do something. Promote workforce diversity and inclusion. It doesn't do you any good just to bring in a whole bunch of people to say you're diverse when you haven't set up the culture to maintain them, to nurture them, to grow them. They will leave just as easily as they came in. Recognize the bias in your documentation. Are you putting in content? A lot of time, there's an example I can share, which is there's a family who was taken. It's a Black family who got involved with CPS. The paternal grandmother was bringing the child to a counseling appointment in sexual assault. The CPS worker walks in with a warrant to pick up the child or something, and that person thought they were just going to walk in and interrupt that child's counseling session, which would have caused more damage to that child. I thought we were supposed to be for the children. So thank goodness it was a good manager there. Said, no, not on my watch. You can pick up the child. That's your business, but you're not going to do it until the session is over. Of course, the grandmother was upset. So after the session was over, grandma will get her child, or they go work it out or whatever. The therapist is white. She's writing her notes. In her notes, she says, a child was accompanied by his paternal grandmother. Grandmother became upset. I couldn't redirect her. She was difficult to deal with. That's what she wrote. Did not put in how the CPS worker came in, try to take the child, didn't put none of that stuff in there. Her supervisor seen the note and said, no. You take that back and you rewrite it and you put the content in there. That stuff goes to the court. That family could lost that child because of the documentation in which was put in there. And what that clinician did was put in her own ideology about how she see Black women, because she labeled us. Imagery and role modeling. Role model the behavior you want to see. And accountability. Make sure you take accountability, say, hey, I messed up, I made a mistake. When I get to action statements, I'll break that down a little bit more. I feel like I'm all over the place, y'all, but my emotions are crazy right now, so I apologize. Racism at its most basic level is the lens through which people interpret, naturalize, reproduce inequalities. We all struggle to truly see one another due to the conditioning that has been imposed upon us through the accumulation of lies and deceit. Therefore, it's so difficult for us to have real conversations about things that matter, things that heal. Racism is not a white issue. It is a systematic structural issue that builds the dominant culture into the position of power, the white culture. This system oppresses those who don't identify as white. Our biases go where we go. It drives me nuts when people, bias in the school, bias at work. It's everywhere you go. The bias is with you. It's everywhere you go. Our biases go where we go. In our homes. What are we saying to our children? What is an earshot of our children? Are we passing this mess on to our children? In our workspace, in our schools, in our community, etc. It is critical for us, it's critical for we the people to fix what has been broken in ourselves, our community, and in our society. That's our job. No one is going to do it for us. Because if they wanted to, they could have, they didn't. We're here. This is share cost, share risk. I don't know if you guys remember Heather Heyer and Charlottesville, I think Virginia. She was out there protesting too. Car came through, hit a bunch of people. Heather died. She risked it. She lost a lot. She lost her life. That is our accomplice. Heather Heyer and many others were accomplices. They was in it with us, fully in it with us. This is hard to see, but it says, my skin should not be a death sentence. Racism is a public health crisis. And as I was saying in the podcast, we've been going through this for a long, long time. Why is it that we wait for someone else to tell us when it's a crisis? Why do we have to wait for someone to say it's a crisis for us to do anything about it? Why can't we just do something about it because we know something needs to be done and not wait for permission? We shouldn't wait for permission to do what we know is right. I'm just giving you time to read the rest of that. Racism is a pandemic. Let's come together and let's be the cure. It seemed like a easy fix to me. I'm not saying that the process of the fight is going to be easy, but coming together, well, that's not even easy because we got to figure each other out. Being Black is not exhausting. White supremacy is. White silence is. Systematic racism is. White feminism is. Sorry, my battery's getting low. Excuse me, unplug it in. oppression is and injustice is. This man, and on the screen, like he said, went to bed at 18 years old and woke up at 60. At the time, he had spent the most time in prison. A man who didn't commit a crime spent the most time in prison. Why? Because he was Black. Colonize this. If you think you're better than, if you're not willing to risk something, if you're not consistent, if you're only an ally to some but not to all, if you're an ally to feel good, if you're an ally to look good, if you are self-entitled ally, and if you have not identified your biases, if you have not taken time to heal your wounds, you're not a true ally. I don't have time to go into this one, but your ACE score, your trauma could play a role in, are you keeping systematic racism going? And imposter syndrome also plays a role in keeping systematic racism going. Don't have time to hit that one. So I'm going to transition on to, because there were some questions, when people register for this group, for this webinar, there were some things that they wanted to get out of it. And so I want to move on to action steps. And then let me see what time it is. And then oh my goodness. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Sherronda, we have a couple questions in the Q&A as well. So, certainly don't expect you to get through all the questions submitted, but appreciate any time you want to spend on that.
Yes. We're done at 11:30, right?
Correct.
Okay. Give me some questions, please.
Okay. One question, and these are going to be big and complex.
Yeah.
No city or other government institution has ever undertaken an initiative focused explicitly on institutional racism. Some cities focus on creating new race relations, social justice. As an immigrant, the fundamental question in the nationwide debate about racial equity must be, who is an American and what is America becoming? So I don't know if there's really a question there. It's maybe more of a comment, but I think it's an interesting one to sort of think about. What is our identity as Americans, right?
So I'm glad you, yeah. So this is how I'm going to respond to that. That is a very good question. And I'm going to tell you why. If you go to other countries, they have their cultures, they have their standards. When you go to their country, you have to abide by that standard. If you got to cover your head, cover your head. If you can't, the World Cup was just played, no beer in the stand. You have to abide by the rules. When people come to America, America adjusts to people coming to this country saying what they don't like about it. So let me give you an example. John H. Van Evire, Evire. He was a Canadian white doctor who came to America in the 1800s and settled in New York. He is the father of white supremacy. He started that, not the colonizers. Well, the ones who came over on the Mayflower. He came, and then they went and picked up Marcus Garvey from Jamaica and brought him here to help us mobilize against what's coming against us. So who is running America? Then I understand that the reason why prayer was taken out of school, because somebody came over here from another country and said, I don't want my kids a part of that. The Pledge of Allegiance got taken out for that same reason. We can't say Merry Christmas. These are our customs before all these different people came in. Good question. What is America? What is this culture? Why is it always flexible and up for debate? That's my response.
Mm-hmm. No, fair enough. Sorry, I wanted to pause, Sherronda. Do you have the steps?
Yep. Action steps.
Okay. Let's maybe go to that, because I think some of the questions that were submitted and that I know have come up during the presentation is what things can we do, kind of in more specificity.
Yep.
All the background's been amazing. So let's make sure you have time for that, and then we can certainly come back to questions. I'll try to queue them up.
Okay. So you guys have access to, I participated in Reimagining Behavioral Health, Race, Equity, and Social Justice. You will have access to this because I submitted it. A couple of them are self-explanatory, but then there's some that I wanted to elaborate on. So let me just try to go through this quickly as I can. We tend to discriminate against people, places, and things that we have no reference for. The reason why we don't have no reference for it is because we have failed to engage ourselves and have relied on people giving us the knowledge in which we need to be getting out there getting ourselves. We tend to get defensive when given constructive feedback. We can't always see ourselves because we have blind spots. I just got to talking about that. We don't see ourselves in ways that other people. So allow the feedback to gain insight. These are things you can do. Allow for the feedback on how you are showing up and the impact that you are having on others. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So stand up for injustice, even if you don't see how, stand up for justice, injustice, even if you don't see how we will benefit directly. So even if you don't know what to do, you do something, maybe that something will help in the long run. Get out there and march, write your congressperson, check in on a person of color, or any of the protected class, check in on them, see what you can do, see how you can help. What service can you offer? What privilege can you offer and extend to them? For me, for me to do this, because like I said, I travel a lot to try to get educated about our real history, the true history, and how privilege was extended to me by my manager is she changed my schedule so I wouldn't have to use my sick and vacation time. And just gave me the days off that I needed to do these trainings. So that was a direct thing that she did for me. Another thing is get away from your narrative, which means that when I first brought it up to the clinic that I work in, to the management, that there's racial issues, her first response to me was, no, it's not, it's just personality conflicts. And then things start, I planted the seed. She started seeing things, and then she came back to me and said, I owe you an apology. She said, I had no idea this was happening. And there's a couple of times we just cried in my office. So we bonded that way. And she said, anything you need me to do, however I can support you, I will. And she has stayed true to her word. Don't let no one tell you who you are. We went over that. Don't accept the social identity that has been given to you. You define who you are, who you want to be, how you want to show up, what legacy you want to leave. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Don't confuse character. Oh, this is the one I really want. Don't confuse character with accountability. If you get called out on a behavior, don't defend the behavior and don't let others defend it. What we do does not always reflect who we are. So that means if I mess up, and I have messed up and I will mess up, if I mess up and you call me out on a behavior, I need to sit with that. I don't need my friends or people who love me, who know me, argue for me and fight for me, because what they're doing is they're arguing and fighting for my character because they know me. I need people not to do that. Let people sit in the discomfort of their choices so they can better themselves and change behaviors. And no one is coming after the character. We're coming after the behavior. Big difference. When people tell you about their experiences, believe them. You don't have to wait for proof. Don't hide who you are by changing your name, changing your language, changing up your food. Just be who you are. Don't code switch. Don't look for don't look for the suffering community to comfort you. So what do I mean by that is I mess up. Let's say, and I have done this with the LGBT. So I'm going to use this. I messed up with the someone in the LGBTQ community, and they called me out on it. I deserved it. And only thing you should do is say, I'm sorry, and move on. But when you constantly, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, then you put the onus on the person who you injured, who you hurt, to now start taking care of your emotional needs. No, apologize, sit with your discomfort. Don't look for nobody to comfort you. You do it for yourself and let people go on about their business. Motives matter. You can't do this work because it's something to do. You can't do this work because it makes you feel good. The only real way to do this work is because it's the right thing to do. When you make a mistake, own it. We talked about that. Allow for the truth to prevail. You can't change what you choose to ignore. I don't see color. Stop being nice and be kind. There's such thing as being nicey. You can still be nasty in a very nice way, but being kind, which means you have to actually get to know someone, have a relationship with them. And it's hard to be nasty and mean to someone who you've actually gotten to know. But that doesn't mean that you get to go around saying, oh, I have Mexican friends, or I have this. No. Because what happens then, we say, oh, I have a Black friend. You have chosen one or two people, you have extracted them, pulled them into your tribe, And I even heard that was not a good analogy to use, because tribal has a lot of ceremonies around that. So you pull them into your life, and then you make a difference between them, this Black person, versus the rest of them. And then you get upset when they show characteristics of the rest of them. So you setting them up, you setting yourself up, that relationship up, to fail in the first place, because you refuse to see them as who they are and where they came from, because now you have created an image of who you wanted them to be and how you wanted them to act. Stop being nice and kind. Stop looking for someone to lead you. Stop it. Go ahead and get your own education and do your own digging. I gave you some resources. Start there. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to help. Lean into your privilege and extend it to others. Embrace conflict. Conflict is necessary. So here, I told you about the doctor, and I didn't know he was a doctor either. He just said racism was slavery was 100 years ago. I don't know how to tone for that. I don't know. And I told him, yep, nope, slavery is right now. And he was like, and I told him, I said, when lunch comes, if you want me to explain it to you, you can come back here. All of a sudden, I see these big, tall legs, this tall guy. He comes up to me and he's like, he sits down and folds his arm. Now, explain it to me. First of all, I don't like how you came at me. But at the end of the day, we had this conversation. I said, what is slavery? He gave me the definition. I said, what do you think prison is? Oh, I'm not going to play these games. I said, no, let's go there. This is what you came back here for. So he and I are going at it, right? And then I said, well, and he kept interrupting me, because that's what a lot of white men in power who have privilege do. They like to interrupt, they like to overtalk, they like to tell you what to think, how to act, how to feel. And I said, just give me 1 minute to break this down for you with no interruption. And I said, and you can't even do that. You keep interrupting me. He said, I'm not interrupting you because I'm a racist. He said, I'm interrupting you because you're an asshole. I said, well, stop being an asshole. And you believe me? I said, I can only go of what you tell me. If you tell me you're an asshole, then you're an asshole. And I said, and it's something in my spirit told me to say, something in my spirit told me to tell him that, what did I tell him? That you're not a bad person. And he said, and then his whole, so we rubbed. But when I said, I feel like, I don't know why, I said, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I don't feel like you're a bad person. His whole defense dropped. It dropped. And he said, I would like to believe that I still have some value in this world. And once we got past the rub, but we had to, sometimes it's hard to communicate what you're trying to communicate, and trying to say what you, it's hard for you to say what you want to say until this happens. So don't run from this. Sometimes trying to be an ally will be messy, but that doesn't mean you walk away from that. That means you just keep engaging until you break through. We broke through. And then once we broke through, we sat down and had a conversation. Where are you from? Where are you from? Where, I've been in the military, but I've been there. And we had a lot in common, right? So it's not always easy, but it's worth it. It really is. Check in with communities that has been racially targeted. Show gratitude when someone has done something that was helpful. And even if it's on Zoom, if you're trying to connect with someone who is your coworkers or whatever, or management or whatever, if we're on a Zoom, click heart, click thumbs up, let them know that you see them, that you hear, that you're hearing what they're saying and you agree with them. And then maybe follow up with a conversation. Find that common ground where you can, instead of looking at your differences, look at what you have in common, and you start building from there. It's not that hard. It's not hard for me. I'll just say it that way. Plant a seed of wisdom. You never know when it will take root. So even when you feel like, this is a waste of my time, you have no idea if it's a waste of your time. You have no idea when that person's going to get ready, how what you said and what you did is going to help them in the long run. And I will tell you that I have another white person who's in management, and we get along fine. I like her, great, the whole nine. But every morning she'll speak to this Black woman who wouldn't respond to her the way she thought that she should respond to her. Matter of fact, I think she said the woman wouldn't say nothing to her. So she made a disparaging comment about this Black woman because she felt like this woman should have given her the same respect as she felt like she was giving out. And so here's what I want white people to understand, and people of color. We have been conditioned to make you feel good. We have been conditioned to put your needs, your wants, your feelings above our own. And then when we don't do that, then we're the problem. I was kind to you, and then we call you out on, when you was trying to do something kind, it didn't, go through the way you thought it should, and then you get called out about it. And now the person who's calling it out, now you perceive them as being a problem because you was nice to them and they wasn't being nice to you by just going along and not saying anything. Stop it. You deal with your own emotions. And it's not our job, at least it never has been my job, to make anybody feel good. It's my job to be my authentic self, to show up as my authentic self, to speak my truth, and to be who I am. That is my job. And if that doesn't jive with you, I don't know what to tell you. And I will tell you, there's certain things that I hear that stop me in my tracks. When people say, who do you think you are? I will stop in my track and address it, just because that shows that you think you're better than. So let's have this discussion about who I am, because there's a lot of people who don't think I can hold court with them. And when I do, they're shocked. Oh, you thought I was a dumb black girl who didn't have no education, because I can't speak Ebonics and I can speak with some type of intelligence. Today, I don't really sound all that intelligent because I'm full of emotions, but oh well, here we are. And then the last one that is on here is stop labeling people, because when you label people, you lock them in. You lock them into an ideology that you don't even know, and it's your biases that's going to come out and start treating that person the way that label says we should treat them. So those are all the action steps. They're all available to you. So I'm ready to take another question.
Oh, Sherronda, we could do this all day, and I can't imagine. It's just so clear. I mean, you sound highly intelligent, just to confirm, and this is important information. And I know it's been emotional, and I know it's truth, and it's passion, and it's heartbreak. So I really do thank you for sharing your time with us today. I think there is a question still in Q&A about, can you elaborate on what white feminism or white-centered wellness means as compared to perhaps, being more holistic, or thinking about what that really means?
Well,
and it's okay if we don't have time to get all into this. I'm sure we can, find some resources to sort of think. But I guess when you mentioned that, it just struck a chord, and someone just wanted to. Yeah, I agree, Sheree. It's a big one. Yeah, but if we're trying to be an ally, I'm guessing that this sort of means you need to, if you say you're an ally, well, earlier in our podcast, and I think you said it here as well, we don't get to identify ourselves as allies, right? And I think that was, really, really powerful when you shared that before. We demonstrate, we prove over time, we take those risks, we are present, we check in, we ask. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. Correct. But we earn that from people who can then call us allies. But part of that seems to be also thinking, if you have this idea of what an ally is, or I'm a feminist, or I'm a wellness focused kind of provider, like, well, in what view are you one of, identifying as that? I guess that's maybe what you're getting at, but feel free to clarify.
No, I think that, that one's is a real big one for me to go into. But also, I would like to say, especially in medicine, everything is white centered. And I remember being in a meeting. I remember being in there's one more resource. I'm sorry. There's one more resource I want to point your mind to. The Mysteries of Mental Illness. There's 4 parts to it. And the show also talks about how we got here. That's another one I think that people, and I think that would answer some of this question particularly here, is the doctors, psychologists, and the psychiatrists who get to set the norms. They the one who get to pass down identities, what white people should act like, black people should act like, blah, 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 right? And I remember sitting in a meeting with a bunch of doctors, male, females, and I can't remember, it was something. And we was talking about how even the BMI scale, how everything tells Black people, you're fat, you're lazy, you're no good, you don't deserve anything, anything that comes your way is because your choices, and none of that stuff is true. So we're talking about the BMI scale, and I am 225 pounds and I'm proud of it. And according to the BMI scale, I am morbidly obese. And I had to tell him, I said, well, the brothers like it. And one of the white guys said, I do too. And the doctor didn't know what to do with that. So sometimes it's just throwing those little jabs to make people understand that, yeah, I see you, I hear you, but I'm comfortable with this. You don't have to be comfortable with this, but I am. So just throwing little jabs. I like little jabs. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, and, just because this has been in the news a lot, I've been thinking about it, that, medication to lose weight is now really on the top of everybody's mind all over the media, because I wouldn't say maybe just white, but richer folks are able to afford this thing
Absolutely.
that has been afflicting people of color for generations. Yeah. Sherronda, I think I just feel like there's so much more to mine and talk about, and I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate everyone's patience. And I just want to say, this is not a traditional slideshow webinar, and I want to acknowledge that I sought you out because of this passion. I love that you keep sharing your time with us and your passion and your heartbreak. So I just want to say, there's no recipe, right? There isn't, so you want to be an ally. I think it could be like a misleading thing, like, oh, great, I'll have my how-to book. You do have the resources and the lists of things to check. And I think that's really crucial. But as we sort of round out our time, are there any other things that you want to share with people as they strive to be or earn that title? Is what I really wanted to say, actually, and that's going to stick with me for a long time. What other kind of parting thoughts might you share with, people here, people who want to support and strive to be an ally, not be called or title themselves? What else would you share with us as we round out our time?
Love is light, and light push out darkness. Let's come together in love, and all the labels and the titles won't even matter.
And that video you shared, I was talking about that. I watched it again before our webinar today. It's very powerful. It's dense. That's a lot in there. And you got to keep surrounding yourself with understanding. And I really take the point that it's power sows division, so we don't attack the power, right? And so we keep having these false divisions between ourselves. There are differences. I don't mean to say we're all one and I don't see color. Absolutely not. But if we don't see those power structures and who gets to determine what's important or gets to determine what, illness looks like or wellness looks like, we don't challenge that, 1/10 of 1% that kind of rules a lot of things in this country.
And I just have one more myth that I want to clear up. If you are a white person who works in a community that is non-white, that don't make you an ally. Because at the end of the day, you can go into a community, but then you go back to your world. You don't spend enough time in that community to say you're an ally, because you go back into your world. What is in your home? Do you have Black art, Asian art? Do you have, I have Japanese rugs. I have my Black art. I have stuff from Mexico. I mean, what are your books and your recipes? What kind of friends do you have to your house? When you start doing stuff like that, okay, now we're moving. But just because you go into a community and you work in that community, that doesn't necessarily make you, and it means you need a check. You need to live. That's what that means.
Yeah. Well, I know we're out of time. Thank you again so much for your thoughts. And also I want to say to our audience, a lot of you may be people that speak on these issues or know others that would be other voices. It's my hope that as our center, that's one way I can try to strive to be helpful, is to uplift and bring these voices to our center, not only, academic research kind of things, and those have a place, but real life and real experiences from people in these communities who can share wisdom and the exhausting yet repetitive messages that we are really needing to hear. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
No, thank you, Sherronda. Thanks, everyone, for making time today. And I hope you can be well during these continued difficult times. Thank you, Sherronda.